Talk to Africans. Today we have three powerful panelists, and we have Professor Mark Anthony Akumbom from Cameroon. We have Professor Plo Lumumba from Kenya, and we have Rutendo Matinyarare from Zimbabwe. And while waiting for the other panelists to join us, we have our professor here with us. Good evening, Professor, and welcome to Talk to Africa.
Thank you very much, Blandine, and thank you to all the participators in this particular program for being part of it this evening.
It's really a pleasure having you, and we also have the Professor Plo Lumumba, who just joined us all the way from Kenya. Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Professor Plo. Are you there?
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us on Talk to Africa. We have on a Zoom today,
Thank
Friday
you.
and Saturday. So today we will be talking about the economic emergence of Africa, and we will be concentrating on the youth. And we want to find out how to get the youth involved with the economic emergence of Africa. So I also want to take time to welcome my co-host Francis. Good evening, Francis. How are you doing today?
Is a youth, there are stages in one's life. There is a period during which you must be in school because that is what it dictates. So you'll find that there are many young people who, by dint of their youthhood, are either in primary school or in secondary school or at the universities. So the segment that we are worrying about is that segment that have graduated at different levels, and people are graduating at different levels in different countries. There are those who drop out of school after primary school, and some of them have skills, and they go to colleges or to vocational training institutions. There are those who have no such skills. And then there are those who come from the universities who may have studied law, medicine, business, and other things, and we are talking about opportunities for them. Part of the problem, in my view, is that in Africa, we have always taught people that you go to school for purposes of being employed, so that there is very little innovation. But let us look at what other civilizations have done. Let's look at the area of technology and invention, for example. We have something called Uber. The person who came up with the Uber app now employs Africans in the millions. You go to any African capital, whether it's in Lagos, Nigeria, or Nairobi, Kenya, or Johannesburg in South Africa, we have an app which is developed by a person who does not own a single car. And yet, he employs people in the millions. You look at Bolt, which operates out of Estonia in Europe, the same thing. So I think that when we are talking about youth marginalization, we ought to be very careful what we are talking about. The truth be told also is that there is this general assumption, and I see it in my own country, Kenya, and a number of African countries, that everybody can be a business person. So you have these specialized funds which government puts aside to say, we are going to give every youth 50,000. Whoever told them that everybody is capable of being a business person, I do not know. There are those who also hold the view that we are going to give them procurement opportunities. We must therefore, going forward, define the roles that youth can play in every country. Africa is the youngest continent, with the average age, I think, anything between 18 and 20. Uganda is the youngest country in the world, with the average age at 16. So many countries come up with what are called youth policies. And I think that many of these policies in many countries, and many of you will have taken time to go through them throughout the continent of Africa, miss the point. The point is that we must create opportunities for young people to innovate and invent. It is in the arena of invention and innovation that we are going to change these young people and to ensure that they have skill sets that the market needs. Let me give you an example. Some of you are slightly older will remember a camera that was made by Kodak Eastman. And you remember in the villages, somebody would come in your village and take your photo and disappear for 1 week. And then he comes and says that the film banned. Kodak Eastman is bankrupt, doesn't exist because of this gadget, the mobile phone. This mobile phone, when you are in school, many of us used to have something called the calculator. The calculator is gone. It is now to be found here. In other words, you must create an environment where young people are thinking on a daily basis and ideas are incubated. And I think that African governments are not doing that as well as they should. And lastly, the youth also think that there is somebody called or something called government that sits somewhere like Big Daddy and thinks only good things for them. You've got to seek and find. If you talk to these young innovators in Europe and America and in Asia, particularly in countries such as South Korea, in countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, it is the young people themselves who are coming up with ideas out of universities, which are incubating beautiful ideas. And fortune favors the vigilant. In a nutshell, I'm saying the youth must not wait for governments to formulate policy. They must create things that inform policy that governments formulate. I believe my other colleagues will have something to say.
Thank you very much, sir, for the response answering to that question. Francis, I believe that you have a question for the professor.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Professor Lumumba. Lumumba, I'm glad to see you here today. I've been following you on different forums on social media. I am glad to meet you today. And my name is Baene Francis. I'm from Uganda, the youngest country you've mentioned, the country with
Yes.
the biggest number of the youth. Now there is a problem with the segregation. The youth have not been given the space, the voice. They are not represented at any level. They are underrepresented. That's what I can say. They are not involved in the decision making. So with that, even it's not only economically, but socially and politically. So what do we do with this? Because you are talking of not waiting for the government to decide for them. How?
You know, brother, this, I keep on telling young people, nobody is in the business of giving space. You've got to create and demand your own space. I remember when we were young students at the university, we were only age 22. And we were in student leadership making demands of the administration of the day. I remember when I was a student leader in 1984, a 55-year-old person was elected as the chairman of the day, and he was removed. So the young people have the advantage of numbers on their part. The only thing that lacks amongst young people is organization. If young people are organized, and let me give you a number of areas. Let us look at the area of art and performance. In many African countries now, million naira, multi-million kwanza, multi-million CD industry. You cannot ignore it. they are even of voting. They can do it. A country such as Finland, their leaders, the average age of their leaders is 30 in Finland and in the general Scandinavian, because young people go out there and they vote their own. The African young person chooses to be used as a youth winger and a strong thrower by octogenarians who ought to belong to the Museum of History. And then they now wanted to vote a young person as their head of state. What stopped them from doing that? But they choose to vote people because either they have money or they are mobilized from an ethnic standpoint. I hear the youth, but I don't sympathize with them. I can't sympathize with somebody who has the goods, the means, but chooses not to use it to good effect. The African youth must wake up. And the day they wake up, let me tell you, Africa will never be the same again. You know, 2 weeks ago, I was accused by somebody, not somebody, just a number of people, that I was supporting a coup d'etat in Mali. I said, yes, this was a people revolution, which was concluded by the military who could not afford to be neutral. And who are the people in charge of that change? 25 years of age. 30 years of age. That is the age. In your own Uganda, ask yourself, and is that is. So young people really cannot afford the luxury of saying, we are not included. Nobody is in the business of inviting people at the dinner party. You actually break into the dinner party and disrupt things and demand that you are there. You've got to. If you knock, they lock the door. They'll never open for you. So you break down the door. This is my prescription in Africa. Break the door down and fill the room and occupy the space. This is the only way we are going to change Africa.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that.
Wonderful, yeah.
Thank you for answering to that question. Yeah. But you mentioned something. You said something about you know, it's time for the African youth to wake up and break the door if the door is not being opened. But today, especially, I'm also gonna talk about my country, where you know, we are met with a lot of violence, and we are met with, you know, a lot of blockade and a lot of things that would literally just break down the spirit of the youth. How do we work around those things? Sorry, Prof. Could you unmute Professor Plou's mic so long?
Yeah. Can I be heard now?
Yes, sir. You're heard.
Yes. In answering your question, let me not be misunderstood to be saying that people should be reckless, people should be violent, nothing like that. But if you want to have what I call a champagne revolution, where you consume champagne and sausage and you then think you can remove some of these fellows who don't want to leave power, you are cheating yourself. Without being reckless, you must be prepared for the worst. And look at the history of many countries, and South Africa and Zimbabwe and Namibia and Mozambique. In 1960 in South Africa during the Sharpeville massacre, young people sacrificed their lives. They went there and confronted bullets. Look at 1976 in Soweto. Look at the Arab Spring. Look at more recently the Sudanese young doctors and lawyers who came out to remove Omar al-Bashir. And even more recently, as recent as last month, look at what overthrew the president of Mali. It is young people. So these murderous individuals are most dangerous when they are about to leave. They are most dangerous when they are about to leave. And therefore we must be prepared. We must be prepared for the ultimate. It is Malcolm X who said that in matters such as this, you must be prepared to go to prison, to jail, or to the cemetery. And I'm not saying that you should be suicidal, but these are possibilities. If you look at countries such as Cameroon, the Biya regime, these are scared regimes. The reason why people like Paul Biya don't want to leave office is because if the day they leave office, they don't know what will happen to them. And therefore they are very dangerous. But if they are confronted with determination, they'll run away. They are also cowards. So I commend to you that you must recruit voices from outside of the country and do that which you must. I used to think I'm a lover of peace, but I'm not nonviolent. I believe that there comes a time in the history of a country where the use of force may be necessary. So in as much as I'm a votary of peace, philosophically, I'm not nonviolent. Because sometimes that is the only way in which you can remove these individuals.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that. That is it's really, it speaks a lot to the youth, and kind of gives us a direction as to how to handle the situations that we're facing. I'm not being biased here, but or I'm not being what how do you call it? Because you also mentioned my country, and it's something that we have been dealing with for years now, and I'm hoping that the youth, those of us who are here, can hear what you're saying and change our mentality. Because one of the things that actually is plaguing the youth today is we no longer care about one another, but we care about how to make it as an individual, and how to make a name for yourself. So some often I saw a few youth and they said to me, when you find yourself between the hard rock and the deep sea, you have no other option than to just try and survive. Do you think that that's a good spirit to carry, especially in the 21st century with the issues that Africa is facing as a continent?
You know, survive is a very loaded word. Yet the truth is that survival means several things. There are those who, in order to survive for the sake of sustaining the struggle in their country, are in exile. You survive to fight another battle or to survive to fight another war for the sake of your country. The survival that I will never support is selfish survival, where you abandon a struggle that you ought to undertake in order to seek comfort and forget the problem. Many people have aided their country because they were in exile. Right now, I have very many friends across the world who are from Amazonia. And the reason why they are out is because the environment at home did not allow them to operate. But they are being very useful to their Amazonian kith and kin. I know many people of South Sudanese extraction or Congolese extraction. So we must survive in order to wage war against injustice and against human rights abuses. If that is what survival means, then I support that survival. But if survival means that you leave your country to go into a comfort zone, that you may drive Lamborghinis and enjoy life and live as if you never had a past, then that is survival that I'll never support. And I believe our young men and women must remember that we must survive in order to fight battles to save this generation and generations yet to be born. They must be sacrificial. In South Africa, for example, people like Oliver Tambo survived because they left the country, but they left the country because they wanted to support the struggle at home. That kind of survival I support.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. So it's we need surviving for your
which you will be familiar with, coming from the East. It was possible, and indeed it was the case when we had the East African University, that Makerere used to be the center of excellence in the area of medicine. Nairobi used to be the area center of excellence in the area of engineering, and Dar es Salaam used to be the center of excellence in matters law. Then we each went our own ways, and we immersed ourselves into curricula which do not equip us with skills. So we have these institutions called universities whose only claim to fame is that they issue certificates of one kind or another. Compare that with countries that we know are Korea. In 1960s, the economy of Korea was at the same level almost as Ghana or Kenya, and they produced nothing. Today, Korea is producing electronic equipment. They are producing earth-moving equipment. They are producing of innovation and coffee. Now, that to me is attributable to our education system. It is now useful and is gladdening that I see many countries, including Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Ghana, and Nigeria, and even South Africa, beginning to go back to vocational training, where people have skill sets that they can then deploy into the market. And I was giving an example just this evening about this young man who owns Uber. Today, you go to Kampala in Uganda, Dar es Salaam, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Lilongwe, or any Africa, Kinshasa, and you ask for an Uber. And every time you ask for an Uber, you know what happens? Money goes to San Francisco in the United States. You ask for Bolt or Taxify, money goes to Vilnius in Estonia, to people who are below age 30. Below age 30. So I think that we must have people who are inventors and innovators. Because of COVID, I'll give an example now. Right now, the international community and people who are in these areas of research are coming up with vaccines. African countries are not coming up with vaccines. I saw one India vaccine to be circulated within India only. China, vaccine. Russia, vaccine. The United States of America, vaccine. Europe, vaccine. In Africa, when the people of Malagasy came up with the concoction called COVID Organic, many African countries did not even want to look at it. They think it is of inferior quality. So in a nutshell, I can't agree with you more that we've got to ask ourselves what we are teaching. You know, somebody was telling me that I'm attending Harvard to study undergraduate law because Harvard is the best university in the world. I say, best in what? If you are studying Ugandan law, how can Harvard be the best university to teach Ugandan law? They don't teach it. The best university to teach Ugandan law is Makerere. The best university to teach Kenyan law is Nairobi. The best university to teach South African law is Witwatersrand. The best university to teach the Nigerian law is Lagos or Ibadan or Isuka or Legon. So this inferiority complex is also something that we must deal with, because education is critical, and we must overhaul our education system and make our education system to be responsive to our immediate needs. I think that is what is education. That is what education is important for. You acquire education to equip you with skills, which skills can be deployed to improve the quality of the lives of our people. For the moment, we have just created certificate issuing institutions, and you have people riding borders or motorcycles who have master's degrees in peace studies and other associated degrees.
Oh, thank you.
Um, it's going to be not only a question but also a request for a word of advice to the youth. So my first question is, how do we tackle the issue where we have universities and polytechnics and that we have graduates from there, but yet we have you know rather the Chinese or foreigners who are being employed to do works that we as Africans have studied in universities and schools to achieve that knowledge. But we get to the point, isn't that like part of the frustration where the youth get frustrated and tend to instead fight, they give up and wanna think for themselves. And at the same time, what advice can you give the youths so far?
First of all, let me say that the continued presence of China in Africa is something that must worry us. It must worry us because the Chinese are taking over jobs and sometimes chores that are best performed by the indigenous people. See that in the area of engineering, and in certain cases, even in government policy. And sometimes it is very easy for African governments, for the sake of survival, to accommodate the Chinese, to accommodate the Lebanese, and to accommodate these particular groups of individuals, because your typical African politician looks to the next election. So if the Chinese can build the road very quickly, which they can point out as being a fulfillment of their electoral promises, they do so. It is therefore in countries to make demands organizations at universities. My good friend from Zimbabwe just said that in Zimbabwe they have over 13 universities. You come to Kenya, over 68 universities. If university students were to confront government in an organized way, and not only university students, engagement of Chinese in our countries, if such engagement does not lead to transfer of skills and technology. And number two, Zimbabweans ring-fenced, for Malawians ring-fenced, for Zambians ring-fenced, for the locals. If that is done in an organized way, I believe that governments will succumb. The problem with young Africans today is their lack of unity. They are not sufficiently organized. You go to universities and you have student organizations that are sponsored by politicians. Therefore, there is nothing that is ideological, and I'm using the word ideology very loosely, not in the classical sense of socialism and that kind of thing. There is nothing that really informs their behavior. We must claim the old past where people participate in processes because they believed in a cause. If young people can do that in an organized way, they can make demands of their governments, and their governments will respond. And we have seen it. We saw recently in Sudan, when the professionals came out into the streets, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and they made demands of their government, and they forced a president to leave office. You can make these leaders do the right thing if you are organized and if you make certain demands, and you must tell them that if you do not do these things, if you don't want to listen to us in this organized way, then we are going to create an environment where those Chinese and other people are not going to be allowed to work in our countries, and therefore to deprive us of opportunities. So the key word here is patriotic organization. Every organization by young people must be underpinned or undergirded by patriotism. To do that,